Hello and welcome to the WriteCome.com podcast, where we help you to make money from your words. Each episode will be sharing tips, tricks, and strategies you can use to make more money from your writing, publishing, and marketing to your fans and audience. Let's get started with your host, Barry J. McDonald.
Hi, this is Barry here, and you are very, very welcome to this podcast episode from WriteCome.com. Now, before I begin, I do want to apologise. I'm a little hoarse at the moment. I did a lot of talking earlier on today, and unfortunately, my voice is shot to ribbons. So I do apologise if I do sound a little bit croaky or a little bit hoarse, but I wanted to get as many podcast episodes as I can in before the end of the year. So I'm going to push through today, even though my little voice is on the rough side. So, what am I talking about today? Well, I just want to talk about the recent podcast challenge we did over on the Facebook page. Now, if you haven't been following me for long, or if you haven't been on my email list or come into contact with me before, you probably aren't well aware that we had a podcast challenge on the WriteCome.com Facebook page. Now, in this challenge, I was going to show how anybody who had no experience of podcasting, how they could go from zero all the way up to having a podcast created and launched in the matter of 5 days. Now, it was a really great success. I didn't have as many people in the challenge as I hoped, but at the end of it, we had a couple of podcasts released at the end. So I'm really, really pleased for those people who had come through the challenge and who had, taken part in it and had done the homework and everything they needed to do. But I'm sure that they are, really surprised that they had got so much done in a week's time, probably from Monday, Monday when they had actually got the first lesson. I assume a lot of people doubted that by the end of the week they would have a podcast out, but we had a couple of podcasts and I'm really, really pleased about that. So what I want to talk about the podcast challenge is I had learned a couple of things from doing it. Now, in the past, when I had sold products before, for example, maybe reports, or I might send maybe some kind of training course. Now, if you don't know me, I do a lot of content and a lot of training and video courses for self-publishing and writing and all these different things. So that is what the kind of bread and butter of my products are. But I find, unfortunately, sometimes even though somebody might buy a product off me, a report or a video course, I would find when I sometimes went back to look to the stats that they didn't match up, that sometimes I had sold more copies of a product than had actually been downloaded, or I found that if somebody bought my video course or whatever, if I looked at the stats for the videos, I could almost see it kind of trailing off. You would find probably the majority of people would kind of watch the first one or two videos, but then as it kind of got further into the series, you would find the numbers would get lower and lower. So it ended up that no matter how many people started at the start of the video course, not everybody finished it. And I don't know what you're like when it comes to selling products, but in my case, it kind of annoys me a little bit when, somebody buys a product off me and doesn't use it. I know it's great having the money and everything, but it's still nice to know that somebody actually paid you cash and actually had taken action on the stuff that you have either written on the page or explained to them in a video. So it used to annoy me sometimes when I used to see those stats like that. But again, that's a personal thing. Some people are happy enough to take the money and just kind of ride off into the sunset. But it used to just disappoint me sometimes, as I said, when people would buy the courses and not actually take an action on it. Now, I have found from doing the 5-day podcast challenge that a lot of people are grateful that I had actually broken my content down into a 5-day period. So what I did was I kind of gave them kind of bite-sized pieces that they could do every day, do a little bit of action, and then in the next day kind of pick up where they'd left off, and then I would push them a wee bit further in the following lesson on the second day and the third day and the fourth day, and then finally finish up in the 5th day. And sometimes it is helpful to maybe break your product down like that, or even break down a report. Sometimes when you give somebody all the details and you hand it over in a PDF, maybe 30 or 40 pages, while you think, you've explained everything well there, they have all the information that they need. Unfortunately, some people do get overwhelmed when you do hand them a large report and you say to them, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do next, what you need to do next. And I have found that the podcast challenge, a lot of people have actually got back to me in private messages and things like that, thanking me for doing it the way I did, because it made it far easier for them to do the little bit of extra work every day, kind of push themselves out of their comfort zone, but they didn't feel overwhelmed. So by the time they come to Friday, they felt a lot more confident that they could actually release the podcast. If I threw that video course to them on the Monday and then I said, there you go, there's 5 videos, you'll have a podcast episode by the end of those 5 videos. I'm sure a lot of people would completely just get overwhelmed, probably not do the work, maybe look at maybe one or two videos and then just say to themselves, well, I'm not experienced enough. I don't know how to do this. I don't know technology, or it's just totally out of my outside my comfort zone, and I can't do it. But because I'd broken my content down into, as I said, small kind of bite-sized pieces over the 5 days, I did find people did follow through on it and did actually take action on the work that I did. So that could be something maybe if you are, like I was, having a product that people maybe aren't reading, maybe are not taking action on or whatever. It could be maybe wise maybe just to take that report of yours or that video course and actually break it down again, break it into smaller bite-sized pieces and kind of drip out that content every day. So if somebody bought maybe a report on, again, if you could just go back to publishing and releasing a podcast, if you had a report, maybe you could just break that content down into maybe 4 or 5 or however many pieces and just kind of release a piece out every day. So when somebody actually buys a report, they don't actually get the full report, but they get a couple of pages on day 1, and then you give them a little bit of homework to do, and then on day 2 you probably email them, or you will open up maybe a page on your website that's going to give them access to the next part of the report, and then they can read along with that and they can take a little bit of action. And then on the 3rd day or 4th day, so you're kind of drip feeding the content out, and so you're not overwhelming them. It's very easy for them to take action on it. It's very easy for them to, as I said, sometimes people do need a little bit of a push, or they do need some motivation to kind of help them get out of the kind of comfort zone that they are in, because you're probably teaching them, or you're probably training them to do something that they've never ever done before. So it might be worthwhile maybe rethinking your content and breaking it down that way. Even something like a simple report, sometimes just giving people baby steps in and on doing each step along the way can really, really make a difference. And another thing I found too with doing the podcast challenge was I had people asking me questions I had never thought about before. Things that I had explained in a video. A few people had privately messaged me and asked me and says, well, could you explain this thing a little bit further for me? How do I work with this software? How do I do that? And sometimes because we are maybe experienced into doing a particular thing, again, I can do a podcast episode in no time at all. But for me to go to somebody else who maybe have never ever done this before, it's very complicated for them. They probably, at the moment, I am recording all these podcasts on Anchor.fm, and for me to say, go on over to Anchor FM and fire up your laptop or whatever, head on over there and record your podcast episode. A lot of people are probably going to, if they're not kind of technically minded, they're going to look at the dashboard, they're going to look at all the buttons, they're not going to have a clue how to do it. So what I found good about the challenge was every day I did ask questions, or I left we had a little comment section below each video where people could leave their comments, they could leave their thoughts, suggestions, whatever. And I did find people every so often would give me a question or give me something maybe that I hadn't explained, and then I could add additional things in. So if you have a product right now at the moment, you may think it is kind of the bee's knees, you may think it's brilliant, but when you do put it through a challenge, you're probably going to find out maybe kind of blind spots in your content that you weren't aware of. Maybe you didn't explain how to work the software properly. Maybe you assumed somebody could do something that they can't actually do, and maybe you could add that in. And by breaking your content down, putting it into a challenge, you can kind of take each section, and then you can actually make sure everybody understands it, so that everybody gets a chance to ask questions. And then when you do go back to maybe updating your product, maybe a second version or third version or whatever you want to do with your product in future, you can update it and you can add in those additional questions that those people asked, or maybe the problems they were having or whatever it was, and you can actually make your product far, far better by putting it through a challenge. And again too, it's an easy way for testing ideas. If you maybe are thinking about maybe you're writing a book, or maybe you're thinking about doing a training course on a particular product and you're not too sure if your audience is interested in it, a very easy thing to do is just send them all an email and just say, well, I've been planning on doing maybe a 5-day challenge on a particular topic or whatever, and then actually test that out and see what the responses are like. Does anybody actually want that challenge? And if you do find maybe that nobody is applying for it, well, then that is probably a good sign that maybe that product you were thinking of doing is just going to be a complete dud. So, but actually, before you actually start to write it, or before you actually record the videos, you'll know straight away that nobody is interested in it. But if you do find maybe that you do come out with that challenge question every so often, and you do find a lot of people jump onto it and are really, really excited to do it, that could be the great idea of a next product that you could do, that when you actually sell it, straight away it's going to hit the ground running and you're probably going to sell a lot of copies. It's going to be very, very easy to sell because it's something that a lot of people are interested in. So that could be another way of using your challenge, by just testing ideas, sending out an email every so often, or doing a Facebook post or whatever, or mentioning it in a podcast or whatever. But actually, maybe just testing ideas out is another really great way of saving yourself time and guaranteeing that the product that you do create is something that people do want. And as I said, if you have maybe a product already, it's a really great way of kind of, finding the blind spots or the parts in it that you don't actually know are poor or that need to be explained properly, and do that. So give that some thought today. If you have some products at the moment, if you find maybe that people are not maybe reading all your reports, or maybe are downloading your video products, or if you find maybe that when you go through the dashboard in your videos, when you find maybe that not everybody is completing the video course, or maybe they're asking you basic questions that were already covered in the report, and you're wondering why they're actually asking that, because you did explain it in. It could be that you're just overwhelming the people, and maybe they are just, they're kind of overwhelmed with all the content, and maybe it's worthwhile then thinking of maybe doing a challenge as well too. Now, in future, even though you do a challenge, you can always release it later on. You can open it up every so often. You can give it away maybe as a bonus to another product of yours or whatever. But just think, just because you're doing a challenge at the moment, it isn't wasted time. You can reuse it maybe in some form or other in the future. So give that some thought today. If you find that a lot of people aren't taking action on your content, is there some way you can break it down, make it simpler, break it down to the baby steps, leave an option, kind of an option for those people to contact you, ask you questions, so then when you actually do create your product, it's far better. Or again too, if you want to use it for testing options. So as I said, I really, really enjoyed doing the podcast challenge. It felt more hands-on. It felt a lot better than me just handing over somebody a video course or report and saying, there you go, walk away there, help yourself out. I did find that, having the challenge, it was more hands-on. It felt more of a kind of a coaching or teaching kind of, that's the way I felt when I was doing it. I wasn't just kind of a marketer handing over a product and saying, there you go, away you go, do whatever you need to do. But it was a bit more kind of hands-on. It felt better, kind of it probably built a stronger bond between me and my list, because I was more hands-on and they could ask me for questions and things like that. So give that some thought today if you are maybe having, as I said, looking for something to do, maybe testing ideas. A challenge could be worthwhile doing. And as I said, I really, really enjoyed it, and it's probably something that I will do in the future in other parts of my business. But those are my thoughts on the 5-day podcast challenge. So as always, if you'd like to ask me a question, if you'd like to see what I'm up to next, you can head over to Writecom, that's WRITECOME.com, or if you drop by the Facebook page next, you never know, I might have another challenge on by the next time you drop over. Or if you'd like to pick up my free report, which is called Words to Wealth, in it I'm going to show you 10 different ways you can make money from your writing. So if that intrigues you and you'd like to download it, head over to the Writecom site. Or if you'd like to reach out to me, if you'd like to ask me any questions, or you'd like me to cover something in this podcast, you're very, very welcome to reach out to barry.mcdonald@gmail.com, and I swear I won't bite. I will have a look at your response, and hopefully all going well. If it's something I can do in the podcast, I'll certainly do it. So as always, thanks for sharing your time again today. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like more from the Writecom.com podcast, be sure to subscribe now for more tips, tricks, and ideas you can use to make more money from your words. See you in the next episode.